to bring them out. You guys want to meet them? I know that that crowd must be cheering and jonesing because the number one. Let's bring out our longtime DC member of the community, author of 75 years of DC Comics, The Art of Modern Myth-Making, Paul Levitz. How about from the 1950s, Adventures of Superman show, the original Jimmy Olsen, Jack Larson. A proper greeting, thank you. Long time Superman writer, artist. You might remember a little story called The Death of Superman, Dan Jurgens. If you saw Superman Unbound, and if not, go get it real quick, because this is the voice of Supergirl, Molly Quinn. Author. What was it? You want to meet everybody else, don't you? Author of some of the most beloved pieces of comic you've ever read. I love this guy dearly. I read him voraciously. Mr. Grant Morrison. If you saw Man of Steel, and I'm counting anybody in this room didn't, the teenage Clark Kent, Mr. Dylan Sprayberry. I missed the funny. Cobalt Brochure of DC Comics. I think you probably all have a copy of something he's worked on in your back pocket. Jim Lee. The quintessential voice of Superman. You know the Superman the Animated Series. I know you all watch all the time and have the DVDs. Mr. Tim Daly. Surprise edition, guy who's responsible for just about anything that gets written these days, screenwriting-wise, for Batman, Superman, you name it, Mr. David Goyer. Okay, sorry, that's all we got. Oh, who do you think's here? As if I need to make the introduction, the Man of Steel himself. They like you. And everyone has an iPhone. How about that? Wow. Man, look at that posters, you name it. Okay, sit. The kid's behind, you gotta watch. All right, so I'm gonna open this up because I have quite a diverse array here of Superman talent. 75 years. I won't live that long. And Superman will go on, I can't even imagine, 750 years until we run out of paper. Until the sun burns out, exactly. What does that mean to you people? I mean, you are obviously representatives of it, but what does it mean to you emotionally, from a personal sense? Anybody can jump in. Start at the end.
Just for me, I mean, it's about the fact that Superman has lasted this long, that we've all been able to participate in this fictional life. is really quite amazing. And as you say, this guy's going to outlive all of us here. And just the fact that we've all been allowed to participate and to add a little bit to the legend, I think it's a really profound and exciting thing to be able to have done.
Anybody else? Okay, Grant said it all. I like it. You know what? I goofed. I need to make one other introduction. Mr. Gary Sasserman is here from Comic-Con with a very special presentation.
Thanks, Gary. It's wonderful to be up here with all these super guests. If you're like me and you grew up in a certain era, the best thing about coming home from school every day was you knew the Adventures of Superman was on once you got home. A lot of us grew up watching that show, loving that show. There were only about 103 or 104 episodes. We knew them by heart, but every day we came home and watched them. It's my honor to be here today on behalf of Comic-Con International to present to the real Jimmy Olsen, Mr. Jack Larson, our Ink Pot Award.
My brother here. Well, let's go back to you, Jack. As the elder statesman on the staff, what would you say is different between Superman then and Superman now? How is the guttural reaction from the audience?
It's different from Superman now and Superman.
Well, I've been there since 1951, when we did the first Adventures of Superman, and my pal, or I was his pal, George Reeves, who was a terrific Superman, and Mr. Cavill was a terrific Superman, and it's been my observation through the years that Warner Brothers has been very fortunate in all of their Superman. Brandon, Dean Cain, everyone. So I've always been amazed. It's a magic part, and I'm very, very proud to be a part of it since 1951.
Try the other one here left.
Yes. Gary, no, I'll just say, look, it's an honor to be part of something that's really a fabric of Americana. If you look at Superman, he really has changed over the 7.5 decades. He's really reflected the culture that he is doing his stories in, I guess. So if you look at the 30s, late 30s, he was a social crusader. In the 40s, he fought the fascists and the Nazis. In the 60s, all these different forms of colored kryptonite were created, and if you ate different colored kryptonite, it gave you weird powers, and you had weird experiences. And then in the 80s, he became more yuppified. In the 90s, he had a mullet. And well, no, I love the mullet. I mean it derogatorily. And then, obviously, today, it's a character that is very intense. And it's amazing to see the CGI and all the technology being able to finally capture the insane powers of Superman so extraordinarily well on the big screen.
I'm curious, Molly and Dylan, the youngest members of the panel, what does Superman mean to your generation?
Please, please, please.
I think Superman's been around for a very long time, and it really means a lot to me that he's been able to be such a role model for people of all ages, of all cultures, of all races, all over the world. That's something that I really think is epic and what makes him what's kept him around so long. And hopefully for very much more of a long time. For another 75 years, and then another 75 years, and so on.
I think that this is on right, yes and no. Superman always makes the best of his situation. He always does what's right, which I think is great for people in our generation to see, because standing up for yourself and standing up for others is something that is very difficult to do, and it seems that, seems to be kind of lacking nowadays. Superman is a wonderful example to everyone, and he's completely impacted my life, and especially Supergirl as well. I can't help it. She's amazing, and their partnership is wonderful, and yeah, I love Superman. He's great. He's the best. He's the best, and I'm so glad that he will continue to influence other generations.
For our esteemed comic folk on the panel, Jim, Paul, and Dan, and Grant, if you had to recommend one or two Superman stories to a complete novice, nobody that had ever read a Superman book, what would it be?
It kind of depends on the generation. I think the magic of what Jerry and Joe originally created is that it gets reborn in each of our work in its time. And I think if I were recommending to a novice today, I'd probably recommend Scott and Jim's work on Superman Unchained. It's a wonderful story. It's not necessarily better than the stories of my childhood when Superman was being done by Mort Weisinger and his team, but it's of this moment and this style. And that's what's great, that we've each been able to step in and transform it and change it and make it of our moment, and that you guys are possessing Superman with the magic of your time.
I think, and I'm terrible with issue numbers and things like that, but Alan Moore wrote a very beautiful story about Superman and the dreams he could have had if he had been able to stay on Krypton. Help me out with the issue number.
Annual 9?
Yes, I believe so. Thank you, Paul. The annual number 9. And yeah, okay. But the beauty of that story is it really captures the idea of self-sacrifice with Superman, and the idea of nobility and what he gave up and continued to give up to be Superman for all of us.
I guess I'd choose a weird one, which is Superman Muhammad Ali from 1970. What I loved about that book was it was actually Superman with a guy that we recognised from The Ring, from on television, and the two of them were duking it out with aliens. And it was so beautifully drawn by Neil Adams. It's a kind of preposterous story, but it's also Superman at his best, and Superman learning to box from the greatest, and I just love that book.
I'm actually going to recommend Grant Morrison's All-Star Superman for those of you. If you've ever read a Superman comic or a comic book, that is the volume to get. Grant is a unique kind of writer in that he actually goes back and rereads all the issues. So what, 75 times 12, what is that, quickly? 828? No, I don't know. Anyway, so he went back and he synthesizes everything so that, because there are a lot of weird Superman stories, especially in the 50s and 60s, and a lot of people reject that kind of stuff. And what Grant does so well is he takes all that, incorporates it, and modernizes it so that you don't feel guilty for appreciating the past, and gives you a story that feels very, very contemporary. I would highly recommend that book. It's awesome.
Thanks, Tim.
I would look. I love all the Superman work that you guys have done, but we actually quoted some of All-Star Superman in the new Man of Steel, so it's a direct homage to that.
All right, conversely, to the actors. When you took the role, and when you even considered taking the role, did the responsibility of the role dawn on you at that point? What was that like? Good one. Jack, Molly, Dylan.
Okay, I'll take this one. Yes, the responsibility, I was fully aware of the responsibility, but when it came to it affecting me, I tried to push it to the back of my mind because it's so important to everyone, or certainly to a lot of people. And if I were to allow that kind of pressure and that responsibility to affect me, I don't think I would have done the role justice. And so I just try to focus myself on the task at hand, which is representing the character properly, as opposed to fulfilling the hopes and dreams of so many people out there, which is a pretty daunting task. And even now, I still put that to the back of my mind.
I had a very different experience because when I started doing the voice of Superman, I thought I was doing a cartoon for a bunch of kids. And I didn't realize that all of you people were out there. And yet, here you are. I was just talking to Henry about this backstage, and it took me a while to realize that I was representing someone who was protecting truth, justice, and the American way. So I now realize the gravitas that it has, and I tend to take it a lot more seriously. The other thing I want to say about Superman is that he's such an enormous personality, such a huge character, that so many actors have been able to embody him, and he can handle it all. You know, including our first British Superman, I believe. Correct?
That I'm aware of.
He doesn't even have to be from America anymore. Apparently our other superheroes don't either. Batman, Spider-Man, they're both English too, right? Anyway, the next James Bond is sitting right here. I also want to say that, you know, I've been doing the voice of Superman for 20 years, and my son Sam just did the voice of Superman in the new Flashpoint movie that premiered last night. I think we're the first father-son Superman. So we're an embodiment of the generational aspect of how Superman is passed down.
I think for me, I saw the responsibility that I was taking, you know, because a lot of, in the scenes that I did, had some heart, which built up to Henry's, the rest of the movie, what he carried on throughout the movie. So I realized that, but for me, it was more about the fact that I was representing kids everywhere who have a struggle with being different. Every kid at that age really feels like that, or at least most kids. So I really feel like that was what I was representing, along with Superman, the movie, but I think that I wanted people to be able to relate to the character, and that's really what we all kind of worked on.
Oh, Supergirl. Well, you know, I have to say, not only, I mean, poor thing, to wake up and all of a sudden see, you know, her little cousin grown into this man that no longer listens to her. I mean, that's completely infuriating. And it's a lot like me, even though I am, you know, 19, I didn't, you know, not age for 20 years because I was on a spaceship that landed, you know, on Earth. But I've always felt so much older than my older brothers and always try to take that control, even though I don't have superpowers, even though I would like to. So for me, that power struggle, that trying to find my way and not wanting anyone's help, I unfortunately really relate with that. And that was fun to bring to her. She's such a complex character. And I had so many great examples before me. There's so many other wonderful actresses that had done her voice. And of course, I would love to see her live action as well. But yeah, some Supergirl and Cavill action. I think that'd be pretty cool from issue 2. So yes, I love her complexity, and every day I discover more and more about her. Even when I'm not voicing her, I'm thinking about her. She's a character that really sticks with you, and I love her. That's that.
The responsibility of being Joe I'm not responsible. There was, our first producer was Bob Maxwell, who produced a radio show. And Jimmy had been a creation on radio, but he was not a comic book character. And I wasn't familiar. I was very familiar with Superman because as a little kid, I collected the Superman. I had the first Superman comic book my mother gave it to the Salvation Army. But I had all of them. They came in at the drugstore where I used to hang out as a boy. And so I've been under contract to Warner Brothers. I've done a couple of big films for them, one with the great director, Raoul Walsh, called Fighter Squadron. And then the studios ran into a bad time in 1951 when they had to sell the theaters. And suddenly there was going to be television, but there had been no film television. There was live television, and Lucy was filming with 3 cameras and became very popular. And so somehow Jack Leibowitz, your boss at one time at DC, they decided to make a series, 26 shows of the Adventures of Superman. And I was cast as Jimmy Olsen. I had nothing to go on, not the comic book, not anything. But the great thing that had to go on was that everybody was out of work. And there were great character actors. Eliza Cook Jr. from the Maltese Falcon, just endless terrific people who came in to work on Superman as villains or friends or whatever. And so the joy of being a young actor and learning to act, which I had not learned, though I had done 2 major films, to learn from these wonderful people and try to do this one-camera show, which was the first one-camera show ever done, with wonderful people like George Reeves, who was my Superman, Phyllis Coates, Noel Neal, my wonderful John Hamilton, who was my Perry White, and to work with all these great character actors. And they let me have my sway with comedy. And so I was able to turn Jimmy into a rather comic character from being a juvenile under duress. And so it just developed, and I had no responsibility, but later I had a responsibility because Jimmy became very popular, and as Paul will know, they then put out a comic book. They put Superman pal Jimmy Olsen, and everybody loved Jimmy, and so I had a responsibility then, but not in the beginning. It just was a blessing to do the part, though I didn't know it at the time.
All right, we take a couple of questions from social media, off of Facebook. What, you don't have a Facebook page? Have you friended him yet?
It's not me.
Not Henry Cavill. I like it. All right, what did you, this is for Henry actually. What did you take away from past Superman roles and incorporate into Man of Steel?
Well, when it came to me creating this character for me personally, and with the groundwork and framework that my friend David here had laid down, I wanted to avoid watching previous live action stuff, purely because that was, in my opinion, someone else's interpretation of the character in the comic books. And I wanted this to be our interpretation of the character without anyone else's influence affecting that, and therefore muddying the line between source material and live action. So I didn't use any influence from previous performances.
Also from Facebook, for everyone on the panel, if you could have one of Superman's powers, what would it be and why?
Flight.
Go right down the line.
I'd want all of them. But I've often said, not one of his powers, but one of the maxims, truth, justice, and the American way.
Flight sounds like a good one. I'd get around a lot quicker. Would have really helped in the days when I had to commute to Burbank for meetings all the time.
X-ray vision.
Superman had a power in the 1950s, which he doesn't have anymore, to shoot tiny little Supermen out of his hand. This is real. This actually happened in the story. Where it's called Superman's new power, and he develops the ability to shoot a tiny little version of himself out of his hand. And while this thing's flying around, Superman has no powers and he's got nothing to do. And he gets really angry about this little version of himself because it's getting all the fame and the renown. And the whole story is just about his anger about this tiny little version of himself. So honestly, that's the power I want.
I probably want the power to have great hair all the time.
Your hair is brilliant. Look what I've got.
Not quite sure. I guess I work in comics, so I'm always facing deadlines like Paul as well. I guess spinning around the world super fast and turning back time, that would probably be a pretty good one. Like a killing in the stock market. So.
Do we know what Superman is like in bed?
I don't personally.
Larry Niven wrote an essay called Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex.
Bottom line is gentle.
I remember as a kid they used to have these ads in the back of comics that you could get these glasses that had X-ray vision. So I always thought about that, but I think it would have to be flight. That's the coolest.
I have to pick one that hasn't been taken yet. He supposedly has super intelligence, like he can learn a language. I always kind of liked freeze growth. Not one we've seen much of.
Probably, I was like, I choose. Well, I gotta say, the one power which I would choose, which I wish I had, which is probably the one thing which really ties him to humanity, is his unbreakable spirit. It's the one thing that he has that real connection with humankind with. And yeah, all the others are great, but it's unbreakable spirit, which is what I admire him most for.
Twitter. Henry.
Oh, joy.
Yeah. They feed them to me. I don't get the choice. What was your favorite part of the physical aspect of becoming Superman?
How do I say this? You know what? Getting in that kind of shape was incredibly hard work, and it was, you know, a gruel and a slog every day to get up at 3 in the morning and train before work, and it would ultimately end up being a 15-hour day. It was exhausting, but I got to be in that kind of shape. I had an amazing trainer in Mark Twight, and when you are feeling that strong, it's a good feeling, I'm not going to lie. And, you know, you feel very fit and healthy, and so just that feeling of health and fitness, and yeah, that was probably the best part of it, just feeling healthy. Thank you.
I have about, we were actually presenting the actual #1 comic book at a party last night, and we were next to each other in line, and I had my arm around his waist, and ladies, fabulous, fabulous.
I'll tell a funny anecdote. I brought my sons on the set when we were filming. I don't know if you remember this, but I timed it so that Henry would be in the costume when my kids were on the set, and I've been saying, you know, yeah, I work with Superman or something. No, you don't. No. So my now 6-year-old was, I don't know, 4.5, and we went on set, and Kate, a lot of the times, was digital. So Henry was in the costume. But my son introduced him to Henry and said, hey, this is Superman. He looked at me and said, no, you're not. Where's your cape? And he was like, he's not Superman.
I proved him wrong there.
Hey, you comics artists and writers, do you have a favorite moment during the evolution of Superman over these many years? And do you see where we might be going next?
Wow. Just, there's so much. It's so hard to pick a moment. For me, I think it's where I come in. You know, if I could freeze frame a moment, I'd be sitting there as a 6-year-old watching Jack and George and Noel on Channel 11 after school with an open comic book that I had just managed to get from a babysitter, telling a story of Superman at the end of the future with a drying up Earth. And my eyes wide, look at how much magic can be going on all at the same time, how much imagination could be there. It's the moment where he collides with my life that's what I'd love to recreate.
Yeah, I think mine would be a little bit similar in that I think back to it, and what I always remember are the individual covers on the stands and the color that was there. And one of the things that always seemed to be present was this sense of nobility and majesty that went with the character, and somehow that seems to translate through anyone who draws it when they do it properly. And it's more the sense of Superman than a particular visual itself.
Well, I guess for me, I kind of like all the versions of Superman. You know, like Batman, this is a character that's so malleable that we've seen a dozen different takes on it over the decades. You know, as Jim said in the initial version, he was very much a rough working man who was fighting for poor people in the times of the Depression. In the 40s, he's a patriot. In the 50s, he's kind of like the guys who are coming home from war and trying to set up homes and have families. So in the 50s, Superman's surrounded by, you know, Supergirl and Superdog and all his relatives and friends from the future. Again, in the 60s, he's Cosmic Seeker. So I think the real Superman is a combination of all of those things. And when we talk about where he is now, you know, we've been through a lot of different recent versions of Superman. And the kind of, in 2005, or in that time, after 9/11, there was a kind of messianic Superman, and it was playing up the Jesus aspect and the sky god aspect. What we're seeing now is a much more human Superman, which I think is interesting. It's as humans and the idea of the superhuman get closer together, Superman becomes more like us, we become more like him. And I think that's what we're seeing in the new movie. We're really seeing, there's almost a point of contact that's happening here. And Superman's much more reflective of how we all feel, and he's trying to deal with problems that we have to deal with as well. So I kind of see that's the evolution of that. I mean, you have to talk to these guys about what they're doing next, but the evolution of that, I think, will be a much more humanistic Superman, and a Superman that we can all almost reach out and touch and become that character.
Very quickly, I would also highly recommend The Dark Knight Returns by Frank Miller. When I was in college, that's what inspired me to become a comic book professional, in that it really took what I thought were traditional stories and brought a whole different level of sophistication to them. He really represented Batman and Superman as almost these elemental forces that were representing all these different things, things that were very current in the 80s. And in a way, Superman kind of lost his way a bit and was working for the Reagan administration. And at the end, I don't want to spoil it, but basically Superman and Batman fight at the end. And I always thought Superman kind of got robbed a little bit. It'd be great to see a rematch between the two of them. I don't know, maybe on screen, I don't know, something.
Busy today, running around Pinky in the Rain and stuff like that. David, anything interesting happened today?
So over in Hall H at the Warner Brothers, I guess most people know now, at the end of the Warner Brothers panel, Zach came out and he brought out Harry Lennox, who plays General Swanwick in Man of Steel, and we actually, Henry read a bit from Superman Returns, and so the next film we're making, we're already in pre-production, comes out in summer of 2015, and we're actually not sure whether the title is Superman versus Batman or Batman versus Superman, but yes, it's
Nice.
that rematch, that combination, the two guys on screen, and that's happening. I also have to say, I grew up reading these comics and read The Dark Knight Returns when it came out, and never in my wildest dreams did I imagine I'd be, writing Batman, blah, 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 Superman, blah, 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 that's crazy.
And I'm safe to say it now, I'm Batman.
No, I'm not.
That's not the only exciting thing going on coming up. As of today, to celebrate the 75th anniversary, DC Comics is launching an uber cool project called the Superman Real Heroes Project. Anyone ever heard of this? Oh, it's behind me, isn't that great? So you will be able to, you fans are invited to tell their stories about friends, about family members. We talk about a stranger you met on the street. Everybody who has, you want to talk about people who embody the traits of Superman himself. Strength, hope, power, optimism. And it's available today. RealHeroesProject.org. You can upload your story. They'll be doing them, there'll be new ones every week for some time to come from the Man of Steel cast. Henry's apparently has been uploaded today.
It has.
Don't you remember?
I do. Oh yeah, of course.
It was a good
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
It touched my heart. I loved it. And join fans around the world in the Man of Steel cast. So please jump on board. Hail some friends, hail some family members, the people who embody Superman in your life. It's a good thing. Anybody have any questions? Oh, wait, I've got 15 minutes of questions from Twitter. All right, you keep those questions respectable. Be nice. Henry's not kissing anyone today. Grant height. Microphone. Volume. It's on now.
Okay, this is for Henry. And when you got the call from Zack Snyder, you were playing a role-playing game.
Yes.
Have you gotten back on it, and what level are you in?
Actually, I have not gotten back into it. I've had no time, and as I think anyone who knows that game in particular knows that it becomes a bit of an addiction, and I need to sleep so I can work.
Was it Minecraft?
No.
Hi, I'm Scott. Just wondering, comic book wise, how do you guys feel about how dark Superman's getting nowadays? Killing Dr. Light, Injustice. Just how do you guys feel about that?
He's just reflecting a general tendency, as he always does. Superman has to deal with how people are feeling, and right now we're in a kind of dystopian atmosphere in the West, and Superman's having to reflect that and deal with it. So I think it's an inevitable part of his development through history, that these are the things he has to handle. If he's dark now, it's because we're all a little bit dark,
My name is Marilyn, and I'm 80 years old. And I also had the very first comic book of Superman. And I was very ill, and everybody would bring me a comic book, and that's how I learned to read. And I passed that information on to my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, and I appreciate all the work that you do, and I hope you'll continue on with that theory of what the first idea of Superman was. And I appreciate all of you. You're marvelous. Keep up the great, great work.
This is for Tim Daly. One of my favorite episodes is an episode where Superman's fighting Doomsday, and he does what's called the cardboard speech. It's very popular. You find it on the internet all the time. What I'm curious about is how much input you as an actor have into that speech. How much of it all comes from the writers? Is it interactive, or is it just it's your script? They give you the script, and that's it.
I really have to give all the credit to the writers. They're the ones that spend the grueling hours thinking about the role and the story and how best to manifest Superman. And I show up, to do the voice, which is, by comparison, an incredibly easy job. So it's my job to fulfill the story that they've created, but it's the writers.
Hi, my name's Keith. In my man cave at home, I have a statue of Christopher Reeve, which I think is a name to be mentioned at this panel here today. I was just wondering, for all the panel, whoever wants to respond, is there a keepsake or something from the sets or something from your experience with Superman that maybe you have in your home?
Good question.
I have another Reeve. My mother met George Reeve when she was a little girl, and I have an autographed photo of my mom from George Reeve that's in my office, which is kind of cool.
Henry, did you keep anything?
I wasn't allowed to actually keep anything because it was all under lock and key. And so instead, I had something made, which was a replica of the key which I have, the command key which I wear. And I had a replica made and I gave it to 4 of my friends as well, who were closest in my life. So that's what I can.
But Henry also made, for all the crew, which was incredibly classy, a commemorative coin, sort of Superman coin for the cast and crew of the film, which is amazing.
I knew Chris. He was a friend of mine, and I'm so glad you brought him up because he was a great guy and a wonderful representation of Superman. So I think we should give him a hand. The keepsake I have is a cell from the animation. Do you know what a cell is? It's the celluloid, whatever it's called. That plastic stuff that they're drawing. That's my keepsake. But also, some of you may know that I do a web series called The Daily Show with my son. And there's a little Superman that's kind of squishy, that doesn't really look like Superman, that appears magically in all these different shots that we do in our silly little web series. And by the way, we have a new Daily Show premiering soon with a lot of former Supermen who will be guest stars in that show.
Woo!
I have an eraser from a page I drew, Superman Unchained. I don't know.
Well, I don't have the keepsake anymore, but there was a lunch in New York. You were there, Paul, when the Smithsonian said they were going to put my bow tie from the Superman show in the Smithsonian, and there were several executives from Time Warner there. And I said to the guy from the Smithsonian, I said, "Where are you going to get the bow tie?" And he said, "Oh, Warner Brothers is going to give it to us." I said, "They don't have it."
Perfect. My favorite keepsake is I have a brick from Jerry Siegel's house from when the writers and artists, I think Jim and Dan probably contributed art to be auctioned off for people to have the house refurbished, so the house where Superman was first thought of could be repaired. And Brad Meltzer, whose idea that project was, got to walk up to the people who were living in the house and say, "Excuse me, did you know you're living in the place where Superman was created, and we'd like to fix your house so it's perfect and modern." And that was a great moment.
My name is Tom. Henry and Dylan, you were both great. David, I loved the script. The adoption angle really resonated with me. Were you caught off guard by the backlash of the ending, since there's a precedent of Superman killing Zod in Superman 2 and in the comics?
Yes, there was a precedent, but having said that, to a certain extent, Superman had, at least cinematically, hadn't really been reinvented since the Donner films, and we knew that as much as we loved the Donner films, our version of the Man of Steel was you know, a lot of people were going to embrace, and some people it was going to be a shock. So to a certain extent, we expected that, but yeah, I mean, John Byrne had done it with Zod and Donner before, and it is what it is. But Zach has spoken about this, and we will be dealing with it in the coming film. That in a way, this film is really Superman. One of the reasons we didn't call it Superman, we called it Man of Steel, is we could have called it Superman Begins. And that moment that Henry...
That was dumb.
Yeah. That moment that Henry expressed so beautifully in the film, the anguish after having done it, is one of the things Zach has said publicly is, we will pick up from that. He's not Superman fully formed in this film. He becomes that in the next film, and he will have to deal with the repercussions of that in the next film.
How you doing there? My name is Christopher. I'm a firefighter up in Northern California, and as firefighters, we have the inspiration that Superman has brought us, the morals, the ethics, the values. How do you guys as writers and as creative personnel, how do you tackle those issues? Are they still relevant today? Is it more of a hindrance, or is it something that you use as kind of like you said, an inspiration? You know, how do you work with Superman's beliefs and his belief system?
I think you have to take it very seriously and elevate yourself into his way of thinking. Because ultimately what Superman represents is the best in all of us. You know, we all have that under a shirt somewhere. Superman's maybe 24 hours a day, he's better at it than all of us. And really what he's all about is that indomitable spirit, as Henry said, is that part of humanity that does not give in and that still believes in us and tries to do the best. So I think you have to elevate yourself to that, and you can't really try that, and you have to take that very seriously. That's the most important aspect of Superman. So that's how I certainly feel about that.
Jerry, David?
Look, yeah, Henry touched upon this. It can be paralyzing as a writer, you know, to sit down and say, wow, you've literally got the weight of, he's the most recognized figure in the world, and so many people aspire to be him, and he represents so many things, and it can be hard to write a character that is an icon. And so when I was writing, we tried to humanize him. It's tricky knowing that, I remember Chris Nolan once saying when we were working with Batman that you can't write your Batman movie or your Superman movie. You have to sort of honor the icon and be aware of the fact that you're sort of working in service for something much bigger. So we're always weighing that with every line of dialogue, every action, you know, knowing that it's going to send ripples throughout the world.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you very much. Henry, I'm going to hit you up later, but I'd like to see if I can get something signed for the firehouse, if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
Can I do that right now? Can I walk up there and do that right now?
Let's go.
All right.
No, yeah.
This is going to be awesome.
Give me that. All right. For the firefighters, the old firefighter movie, right? 100%.
I just generally wanted to thank you guys all for the contributions you've given over the years to Superman to get to the point where it is now and to give us a movie like Man of Steel that's just so on point for what we've always wanted to see in a Superman film. And then I had a question for Henry, more or less about your diet and your training. I recently did like a 2 or 3 week no carbs just to kind of get in shape. It sucks. I understand what you went through. What did you hate the most about your diet? I know you were contractually obligated to do that. And what did you enjoy the most about just stuffing your face with carbs at the end?
The thing the dieting bit, I was in such good hands with Mark White and Mike Blevins that it. Thank you. Yeah. When it came to the leaning stuff, they had me primed and everything, and yes, they cut out a lot of carbs from my diet and to prep me for the shirtless scenes. The most difficult thing was just that it was over a 6-week period that we were staying lean, and so instead of it being just for one day, like bodybuilders do, and you stand under a nice light and you get a spray tan, I had to maintain that and still work long hours and still get up in the morning and train, and that was probably my least favorite thing. But at the end of that, I did get the chance, Zach and Debbie Snyder bought me an apple pie from a local pie company and a tub of ice cream, and then I ordered a big 16-inch pizza on top of that.
All right, we have to stop. I know we can go all night, but people have flights to take and places to go, and I have to have dinner. So, I want you all to give a little round of applause to Mattel and Warner Brothers. Do not rush the stage. There will be no autographs, no photos. They will be walking out that way. Jim and Kim are signing autographs down in the DC booth at 5:45, I believe. So you'll get that opportunity. Henry's not signing, don't ask. I know there's no more firefighters, but I do want you to give a round of applause for Paul Levitz.
I need